Friday the 13th, if you're superstitious out there. But I was just going through some stuff last night, and I just realized that the UFC celebrate 27 years yesterday, and man, this has been my favorite sport of all sports to follow. I mean, I used to be a huge sports fan growing up. Hockey, football, basketball, boxing, UFC, MMA fighting, and still love MMA. And kind of fell out of love with the other sports once people. It wasn't even the neon and the political platform these people have that in my opinion are so entitled. They're so self-entitled. I mean, but that's another whole episode podcast. But but seriously, the whole perspective of sports, and as they get softer and people, more entitled with injuries. I remember watching a hockey game once where Mark Messier got slashed in the head with a stick, had like a gash, and he got stitched up in the penalty box and didn't miss his shift. So those are the people that I watched, kind of admire, and then you kind of lose this toughness. I mean, there's still some great players out there. Like I talked yesterday about that documentary, Project 11. I mean, that kid's tough. But anyway, UFC, man, 27 years. I remember getting those videotapes. Growing up in Canada, I remember getting those videos. VHS Beta, I think, was the first one my friend had, and we watched the UFC. I remember his dad was into, I think, Taekwondo. He was into Taekwondo, and I remember watching, Hoist Gracie and Ken Shamrock. And Hoist Gracie being this little guy, you see all these, because back then they had no weight classes, so it was really cool. So you'd have this 176-pound guy. I think that's what Hoist weighed. Just real skinny, 6 foot, 6'1" maybe, and he was just taking people down and choking them. No one really knew anything about that, and that's back in '93. No one knew about jiu-jitsu. Everybody thought before this. This was because this is really a historical time in MMA, because you got to see what skills were going to be the best. Everybody's Taekwondo black belts. They're dangerous. Or is it the wrestler, the boxer, the kickboxer, and then this whole new jiu-jitsu, Gracie phenom, just going through people. And it was real interesting watching this. And then I can't believe it's just been 27 years. The other, I think we're watching UFC. What was the last UFC? Gaethje and Khabib, 254. I mean, that's crazy. 254 of these just pay-per-views, plus all these other fights. I mean, just nuts. But some of the big highlights for me, man, over the years have been, talking about, UFC, 27 years, some of the great fights. I mean, of course, the big turnaround everybody talks about because of The Ultimate Fighter was when Forrest and Stefan had their huge fight, and people actually were tuning in. Like, I think I saw Dana White talking about the ratings of the fight, and people were like, each round, because it went to I do believe a third round. It was like a sudden death. It was just a crazy fight, and people were tuning in. And each round, I think by the third, it was like there's millions of people. I can't remember exactly the amount of people, but it was just a huge amount, and people started seeing that was this kind of. I mean, for me, it was always. I mean, I was always a fan before the Ultimate Fighter, Ultimate Fighter house, and but I was a big fan because it was good to see that show push, and with that prime time match between Forrest and Stefan, that just was just took it to the next level, especially because those guys, man, they really put on a show, with Forrest winning. And I think they gave Stefan a contract as well. I can't remember when that was. I think that was back in 2000 and I want to say probably 2010 or 12 or something like that. Maybe I'm way off here. Let me look back. So, yeah, probably 2000. Yeah, we're going back. I'm way off here on my. We've had they had the Ultimate Fighter in 2007. Yeah, so it was, a long. I think it was 25 years ago, actually. I think I saw some kind of breakdown of the Ultimate Fighter show and all the past winners and stuff. But anyway, that was a big turning point. The UFC. And then people were catching on, but the big fights for me back in the day were like Randy versus Chuck and Chuck versus Tito. I liked Lee Murray. This is a crazy English guy that was I think he actually, him and Anderson Silva, I think I don't know if Lee beat Anderson, or they had a really good fight anyway. And then Lee robbed the bank and ended up going to prison for like the rest of his life with the highest heist in English history, some kind of bank robbery. But yeah, I don't even look that up because Lee Murray, he was a great fighter, but of course, crazy. I think he got into a little bar fight with Tito Ortiz. So they fought. So Lee Murray and Anderson fought. Anderson won that fight. That was back in the Cage Rage 8. So so some of the other highlights, GSP's reign, Matt with all those great fights with GSP, Matt Hughes, Matt the guy with this Matt Serra, yes. And seeing him evolve, then you see the birth of John Jones, dominating the light heavyweight. It's crazy. And of course Khabib, this is now the standard. It's so crazy how much the sport has changed since they brought in weight classes, and people are just like, there's a lot of athletic people that are in the UFC, like a TJ Dillashaw. He's an athletic, like just an athlete that's learn how to fight, taking it to the next level. There's guys out there that are just fighters. Like Michael Bisbee. He's just a fighter. He's one of my favorite guys. So tough. It's another great fighter since he had a great lustrous career in the UFC, fought like the last half of his career with only one eye. How he faked all the medicals, and it's just crazy. So and then we saw, Brock Lesnar come over, fight Randy. You've seen Conor fight Floyd Mayweather. You've seen this mix with boxing, these huge sporting events, and now with this whole pandemic shutdown, you see the UFC accelerating. It just, they're really the only live sport out there. They started, I think now there's some other sports that are playing, but I don't follow anything, like I said earlier, but UFC, they set that standard, being able to have these cards, even though there's no crowd. We've seen Holly Holmes, her reign and then her dismantle, and then we've seen all these Amanda Nunes, these women champions, just crazy talent. Holly Holmes, some of the really great fights, the rivalries. Really enjoyed the Daniel and John, and then Cormier and Jones rivalry. The Woodley and Josh Thompson. That's another underrated fighter. I was watching Rogan and Luke. We're talking about some underrated fighters, and Josh was he doesn't get the credit that he deserves. He's a great show. Him and Big John. I mean, his insight in the sport is amazing. And he was such a killer, man. He was the first one to knock out Nick Diaz. I mean, just a straight killer. Some of these straight killers, like who's that kid? Jeez, I'll remember it here as I'm going through just some of these fights. You get the Bisbee and Rockhold. That was a great knockout where he finally won the belt in a rematch, short notice fight. This craziness. Then you got that Henderson and Bisbee fight where Henderson, that punch after, and I think that was one of those, causing damage for the rest of your life kind of events. And McGregor, of course, the feud with Khabib, the Robbie Lawlers, those fights, the Shoguns, the BJ Penns, the McDonald fights. I mean, God, him and Lawler, Rory McDonald, crazy. There's just so much happened in the last 27 years, man. Chris Weidman beating Anderson, Dillashaw, and then Dillashaw failing the drug test, and coming back. Just that whole adversity. I love fighting because it's really about adversity. It shows you, because you don't have a team. Well, you do have a team of trainers and training partners, but really even now with this whole pandemic, it's really one-on-one more. You have your people that you bring in for each skill set, but you face adversity. I never fought professionally but I mean, following the sport, I can only imagine, comparing it to my arm wrestling, victories or training. I can only imagine that times 100. How much work goes into that craft, and they don't make a lot of money, and they don't start out with making a lot of money, and you can become a superstar, and they still don't make a ton of money. I mean, you make a great living, yes, to be a professional athlete. When you look at the scale of other professional sports, no, it's on a lower scale. But thing is these guys and girls are just they're warriors, and they love the sport of MMA. And that's what I love about sports. When you fight or you play a sport, not for financial, because when you look at the NBA and these guys are getting paid $90 million and they can't play if they have a hangnail, or you know what I mean, like it takes away, it makes everybody soft. We live in a soft society now. Everybody's caught up in their feelings. So that's why I like the stories. Not only the fights are amazing, because you see the hard work, but I follow the embeddeds, the countdowns, the interviews, Ariel Wani's show and ESPN now with all the stuff going on. I mean, I follow the sport. I'm an advocate, big advocate for the sport. I'm a huge fan from day one. You can really see these stories, these people that they go through, like Rose on The Ultimate Fighter. She, really let her whole guard down and was able to share her life about, her abuse and, where she came from, and it's, it's honesty, it's raw, and that's, I love seeing that. Frank Mir, when he broke his femur and came back from that, I mean, you see, these guys coming back from the adversity. Just the other night, Glover Teixeira winning at 42 years old, man. It's great to see him coming back and making a comeback. And it's like they face adversity and they push through. And they're the ones that are sitting there in the agony of defeat and the triumph of victory, So, I just really admire that, and it's really awesome that they've been around for 27 years. Looking forward to another 27. Forward to some great fights in the future, and happy birthday UFC.